long story short, they were losing a nickel for every dollar they took in the door for 12 years. So it's not only cash flow, it's got to be profitable cash flow. And I know you've seen the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing companies, and I have too. If you go back to the list from 5 years ago, probably 2/3 of them are out of business because they grew themselves out of business.
The following podcast is brought to you by Thryv. Manage, run, and grow your business all from one dashboard using one login. Small business runs better on Thryv.
Hey, this is Gordon Henry at Winning on Main Street, and we're lucky this week to be speaking with an expert on building a profitable small business. She's Ruth King, known as the Profitability Master. Ruth has been helping small business owners for nearly 40 years. She's written for Money and Finance magazine. She's the author of 6 books, including recently 101 Dumb Financial Mistakes Business Owners Make and How to Avoid Them. Welcome to the show, Ruth.
Thanks for having me, Gordon. I'm happy to be here.
Well, excited to have you. And just a little more quick background on Ruth. She's a serial entrepreneur. She's owned 8 businesses in the past 4 decades. One of her businesses, called Business Ventures Corporation, began in 1981. And through that company, she coaches, trains, and helps contractors in particular, and also others, achieve the business growth and goals they want to achieve. One story Ruth is especially proud of: an HVAC contractor went from generating $750,000 a year to less than 10 years later, $10 million a year with massive profits. And then just a few years after that, sold his business for $9 million cash. So she knows what she's doing, and she's got a lot of success stories to share. Ruth has a knack for helping business owners truly understand their financials and then apply their knowledge to fuel massive growth, income, and profits. What should you, our listeners, get out of this episode? If you're just starting out, if you've been in business but aren't yet profitable, or if you're profitable looking for an exit, listen to Ruth. She just may unlock the path the success you've been dreaming of. Ruth, again, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started, what led you to today?
Well, as you and I talked a little bit off air, I started as a chemical engineer. And you're going to ask me, what does a chemical engineer have to do with starting businesses and growing businesses and doing all that sort of fun stuff?
Yep.
Well, I had 2 summer jobs in chemical engineering that I absolutely loved, got out in the real world and absolutely hated it. And so while I was working, I decided I'm going back to school, get my MBA, and I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I've always wanted to own my own business. I started doing little businesses when I was a kid. We had a flower stand where we sold flowers. We did this, we did that, and everything else like that. So entrepreneurship's in my blood. And then when I was in MBA school, at night, by the way, I realized that I'm really good at numbers and explaining numbers. So that's where the whole profitability thing came about. And I ran into a colleague who was in MBA school with me, and I started one of the branches of the Small Business Development Center in 1981, when it was nobody knew whether it was going to be around. It was the sunset legislation. It was going to sunset in 83. So I helped a lot of small businesses there and found a passion, and it just kind of grew from there.
That's great. Yeah, Small Business Development Center, SBDC. Many of our listeners have probably heard of it or even been to visit those facilities or talk with some of the consultants. They're a great organization. So before we get into all the great answers you have for small businesses, I thought, once again, let's just set this stage. We've talked about this on the show before. Sad statistics: 20% of small businesses fail in their first year, 50% in the first 5 years, and more after that. What are the reasons so many small businesses fail?
It's actually very granular. They don't know how they make money. They don't know how they generate revenue. And it sounds really crazy, because when I ask small businesses, how do you generate revenue? They say, we sell this, we make this, we provide this service or product. But it's much more granular than that. What does it take to make that product? What does it take to provide that service? So for example, if you're a restaurant, how you generate revenue is by meals. So the more meals you sell profitably, guess what? You're going to be in a situation where you generate revenue and then profit. If you're a gym, i.e., it's memberships. Are your members profitable? What do you have to do to build up the profitability of your membership? If you're a home services industry or a business services industry, plumbing, electrical, heating and air, what am I listing? Lawn care, pest control, all those types of things, your actual way you generate revenue is billable hours. If you don't bill an hour, you don't make money. And so once you understand taking it that much below how we make money, which is what everybody thinks, and get to the very granular and say, okay, what is it that actually produces the revenue? And once you know that, then you look at it and say, okay, here's my revenue for that. How much overhead for each billable hour, for example, for a home service business, or for each meal, how much overhead has to be added? For each widget we produce, how much overhead has to be added? Then what net profit do we want per widget or per meal or whatever else it is? And once you know that, you understand what it's going to take to generate profitable revenue. And until you get that, doesn't matter.
Now, we often hear, when you see those lists of why businesses fail, very often the words I see at the top of the list, like number one, are cash flow. Very often you hear cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. So isn't cash flow a little different, where it's not just about generating the revenue or billing the hour, it's also about getting that money in fast enough that you are ahead of the game, right? You're not sending more money out for stuff than bringing in, right? Isn't that part of it?
That's part of it, but it also has to be profitable cash flow. I'll give you an example. One of my clients who's now successfully retired, I have lots who are now successfully retired. He started his business with a partner, grew it to $2 million in revenue, and never bothered looking at a P&L or a balance sheet. As long as they had enough cash in the bank to cover their bills and cover their payroll and take their discounts and do what they want, they were fine. So they were growing so fast that the money that came in from one job started the next, and that started the next project. And as long as they were continuing to grow, they never saw cash flow issues. And then they hit $2 million and revenue stopped. I mean, it just flatlined. And they started having to scramble to pay payroll, or couldn't take their discounts or whatever it was. And it was like, wait a minute, we're this $2 million company. We've never had this problem before. What's going on? They use a little bit different vernacular, which I will not use here. But we ended up, long story short, they were losing a nickel for every dollar they took in the door for 12 years. The growth masked it. So it's not only cash flow, it's got to be profitable cash flow. And I know you've seen the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing companies, and I have too. If you go back to the list from 5 years ago, probably 2/3 of them are out of business because they grew themselves out of business.
Right.
For the reasons like that.
Right. It's not just about growing the top line. So let's talk about how you help small businesses, and then we'll talk a little bit about your book. So you have a coaching business, and you bring in clients, and what are the typical problems that you see, and walk us through how you actually help solve them.
Well, before I start working with somebody, I have a thing called 20 questions that they have to send me. And if they're not willing to do that, we don't work together. So part of the 20 questions is, where are you with respect to P&Ls? Where are you with respect to balance sheets? How did you come up with your pricing? Give me examples of this, this, and this. I ask them for all of their invoices that they send out to customers and all those sort of fun things, so I can know what's going on from a background perspective. A lot of times I get the call when they get in trouble. The worst I started with was a negative $400,000 net worth company, i.e. they would have had to pay $400 to close the doors. We did not file bankruptcy. We ended up bringing all the creditors in the room and said, look, if we file bankruptcy, you're going to get 10 cents on the dollar if you'd like it. It may be. Let us do this. Give us a couple of years. Here's the business plan. Here's every month, and we will report to you every month what's going on. And it went up and down, because we didn't do straight line growth, but up and down seasonality type stuff. And we pretty much kept to the plan, and we got them out of there, and they were profitable now. It was a tough 2 years though. It was a really 2 years.
So summing that up, you basically dig into all the financial statements, really go line by line, figure out what's happening in the business from a financial standpoint, and then you sort of extract yourself from there and say, what's the business plan going forward that's going to address whatever problems we have today?
Yeah, and the other thing that's important is what their exit plan is.
Right.
And a lot of people don't think about that, but the reality is depending upon what your exit plan is, you may take everything out of the business if you're not going to sell it to a third party or something like that. But if you're going to sell it to that third party who's not family or employees or something along those lines, you have to keep more in the business of profits than if you're going to just pass it to the next generation type thing.
Right. Now, this may sound kind of obvious to some people. Like, of course, you have to have financial statements and look through them carefully and, make sure you're running the business in a profitable, responsible, good cash flow kind of way. But obviously, a lot of people don't. So is the reason they don't because they don't have a CFO, they don't have an MBA, they don't have somebody next to them who understands the numbers, and they're just in love with making pizzas or fixing bikes or cleaning teeth? Like, is that the problem?
The problem is financials are not hard, and CPAs have made it in our heads. And I work with a lot of CPAs that financials have this very funky language, and they don't. They really and truly do not. Accounting was invented somewhere between 12 and 1300 by the Venetian monks who had to take care of the rich Italians' money. Okay, they didn't have an abacus. The Chinese did, but they weren't talking to the Italians then. They didn't have a calculator. They didn't have QuickBooks. They didn't have anything, so they had to make it very simple. I liken it to the first time you play golf, for example, or the first time you, from an HVAC perspective, read a wiring diagram. You look at it and go, I don't know what this is. But you work at it because it's part of your job. You have to do it to do what you do well. So everybody who's listening has had hard things they've had to overcome so that they can do their jobs well. This is just another piece of the puzzle. And I tell owners, I say, look, you do not have to do the books. I would prefer that you don't. Your job is oversight. Your job is when the bookkeeper gives you the P&Ls and balance sheets to understand what they're saying so that you can spot the issues before they become major crises. And, I've got a bookkeeping test. If anybody wants it, let me know. I'm happy to send it out. It was done by the American Institute of Certified Bookkeepers, I think, and it's phenomenal. They don't pass the test, you don't hire them. That's just bottom line.
Well, now you're a busy person, as I said before, a dizzying amount of things, the books, the writing, the coaching, and so forth. When someone brings you in, you don't have all the time in the world. Are you like a little SWAT team? You go in and study the statements, and then in a few days, presto, here's the answer? Or do you work with them over the course of months? Like, what's your style?
My style is we have 2 intensive days. They send me the information beforehand. We have 2 intensive days. We put together the plan. We put together the budget. We put together what needs to happen if they have to hire, if they have to fire, whatever else it is. And I work with them on a monthly basis after that for a period of time. I have some clients who I've worked with since the 1990s. My oldest client sold this business in December of 2021, and I started working with him in 1987. And I helped him sell it. It was time for him to go for a lot of different reasons. We found the person who was going to buy it. We valued it. We did. And he's really happy doing what he's doing now. So.
Okay. Wow. So you've got a large stable of clients. Can I ask you, how much does it cost to work with Ruth King? What's your rate?
It's $10,000 for the 2 days plus travel, and then $597 a month thereafter.
Okay. And are you typically traveling on site? That's you're going to visit every client?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm picky about who I take.
Yeah. Okay. And your bio says you specialize, or at least in the past, specialized in contractors. Why is that?
That's where the niche started. It started in contractors, and it's grown out of that. But the reality is that's where it got started. That's where, all the stuff got really developed. And I promise you, I worked with restaurants, bless them. I would not want a restaurant for all the tea in China because of the stuff that they go through. If you talk about theft, oh my gosh, they have the worst theft of any, and it's food theft. And, how are you going to do that? But they have the hardest issues, I think, of just about any type of business going. And they're not cooks. They're actually in the marketing business. And until they realize that, they're not going to generally make it.
For sure. And while you're on that topic, I know one of your specialties is identifying and stopping fraud. Are restaurants particularly prone to fraud because there's so much cash and often the boss isn't there?
Yeah. And it's not only cash, but theirs is food theft.
Mm-hmm.
A great deal. So if they buy enough, let's say for X number of meals, and they can, I'll say 100 meals, but they can only serve 70. Well, what happened to those other 30 if they walked out the door?
Right.
And so they have to be very careful with that. And so a lot of them have said, look, we're going to feed you before your shifts.
Right.
And it solved a lot of it.
Yeah. Yep. I remember as a kid working in a bunch of restaurants. That was the part I looked forward to the most, was being able to eat the food before and after the shift. It was the greatest. All right, so let's talk about your books. So you've written numerous books: The Ugly Truth About Small Business, The Ugly Truth About Managing People, The Ugly Truth About Cash, Courage to Be Profitable, and now your sixth book is out, 101, here it is, 101 Dumb Financial Mistakes Business Owners Make. Everybody should read this. So before we get into some of the tips, it seems this is really a how-to, and more importantly, a how not to book, right?
Yeah, it's like, thank you to all of my clients over the past 40 years for helping me write this book.
Right, exactly. All the dumb mistakes. Right. So let's go through a couple of them. No, a dumb mistake number one was believing that profit is a bad word. I saw that. I was like, who goes into business and thinks profit is a bad word?
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
If you have a hobby rather than a business, i.e., you love what you do, but you don't care about making money. I mean, there's a lot of people who are listening to us now and watching us now who are like that. They have a hobby, they don't have a business. You can still take care of your customers, enjoy it, but they have to be profitable. If they're not, you're going to go out of business, or you're going to have a hobby, or you bought a job. You know, none of the fun things that go along.
All right. Dumb mistake number two, abdicating the responsibility for the financial side of your company. So again, that's the person who loves making the pizzas or fixing the bicycles or what have you, but doesn't think about the numbers or figures somebody else worry about the numbers. You can't do that, right? The boss can't do that.
The boss can't abdicate. They can delegate, let their bookkeepers do it, but it is their responsibility to look over the financial statements and then watch. If something doesn't look right, they should ask questions. You know, one of my very first clients was a florist, and she had a bookkeeping service do her books, and she'd look at the P&L bottom line every month, throw it in a drawer and let it be. And she started having real problems with her business, and that's how I got called in. And so I looked at these things and I say, you really don't know how to read these, do you? She goes, nope. I said, okay, here's the questions to ask. Boom, 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 boom. Long story short, the bookkeeping service, whenever they didn't understand something, instead of asking what it was, they put it in miscellaneous sales. So you know what that did to her bottom line. She fired him, obviously. She learned enough. She said, I had spent 8 miserable weeks in school, but now I know enough to question. And she's got a bookkeeper now that she absolutely loves and everything. Well, loved, you know, this was 40 plus years ago, but I mean, she's kept up and things along those lines. But she's got bookkeepers who do day to day. She now knows enough to be able to question, and boom, it's done. I mean, The Courage to Be Profitable was written in English, not accounting babble, simply because people don't understand P&Ls and balance sheets. They're in English.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like you're recommending every small business owner who's serious has to at least go through enough either learning or reading or educating to be dangerous, basically, like to at least be able to sort of understand the financial statements, if not more. And then secondly, bring in a bookkeeper who you trust, who can work with you closely so you can manage the business in a profitable way.
Yeah, if you look at, if there's negative cash on your balance sheet, you know that's not right, because if you had negative cash in the bank, they'd close your checking account or your savings account or whatever else it is. You cannot have negative cash in the bank. It doesn't work. How many bookkeepers give you a statement that has negative cash in current assets or negative payroll taxes? I promise you the feds don't owe you money, or the state doesn't owe you money. You owe the state money for payroll. It's not the other way around.
Do you recommend any particular systems for small businesses, whether it's an operational system, a marketing system? I mean, like computer systems. And what about accounting systems?
I could care less. To me, accounting systems are agnostic. Some people use QuickBooks, some people use Sage, some people use different accounting systems. But the reality is debits and credits are exactly the same thing in every single accounting system. And balance sheets have the same format in every accounting system. P&Ls have the same format in every accounting system. Choose one that you're comfortable with, choose one that you like, and go for it and just use it. And then make sure that if you're going to use some sort of CRM system on top of it or social media on top of it, it will feed into your accounting system. Otherwise, you're going to have something on this side, and then you might have to do double entries, and that's not where you want to go. That's a waste of time.
Right. Okay. All right. So backing up the camera a little bit on businesses, what's your thoughts on franchises? We've been talking a lot on the show about franchises lately. many people, when they think about opening their own business, they have the dreams of being the entrepreneur. They're going to open, as you said, the restaurant, Gordon's restaurant or Ruth's restaurant or a contractor business. But franchises for many may be a better route, right? They're more predictable. They're lower risk. They've got a brand. Talk to us a little bit. Do you recommend that path?
Sometimes I've done a lot of work with some franchises. And the reality is they give you an operating system that is proven. Now, if you try and get outside that operating system, more than likely you're going to get in trouble. And not from the franchisor, but just because you're not operating your business in a way that the franchisor has proven that it works. So if you're the type of individual who loves following process, is really good at saying, okay, I'm going to do A and I expect B, I'm going to do C and I expect D, and you want somebody behind you to help you do all of that, franchises are wonderful. If you are a rogue entrepreneur and you don't listen to anybody, I don't think a franchise is going to work for you.
Right. So it has to suit your personality a little bit. But for
Yeah.
people who just want to be a success in business and aren't necessarily looking to reinvent the wheel, franchise may
That's
be a great
perfect.
path, right?
Yeah, it's a great path that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, if you look at, because there's some franchises that I've worked with where the franchisees that cause the most problems are the ones who don't follow the system. And
Right.
they're the ones who have the worst P&Ls and balance sheets because they're not following the proven system. I want to do it my way. Well, then why did you buy a franchise?
Right. Exactly. So I want to ask you a little bit bigger picture question. You're a parent. You want your kids to be successful, I'm sure, like every parent. Do you tell them to pursue running a small business, or do you tell them to go work for a big company?
Funny story. My daughter, Bob and I, my husband, who has since passed, and I were both entrepreneurs, and we both had business the entire time Kate was growing up. And so Kate got out of college and she said, I'm never going to have a small business. So what does she do? Starts one. And they had their years of tough times, but they've actually done very, very, very well. It took them a little bit of time to get going and get their clients. You know the story as well as I know the story. And mom's there to encourage you. You can do this, go for it. But the reality is there are some people who are not suited to be entrepreneurs, and there are some people who are not suited to follow in the corporate world. It's almost like the franchisee. If you're going to be by yourself and want to do it your way, don't buy a franchise. A lot of times what happens is you can get a lot of experience working for a large company, and then you decide you want to go out on your own. Just make sure you have a customer before you go out if you've done that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So Ruth, let's say somebody's listening to this show and says, man, this Ruth, she's dynamite. I want to hire her. What happens from here on in? How do they get started? How do they find you? Walk me through the path.
So they can either call us at 770-729-8000. We'll have probably a 15 to 30-minute conversation to make sure it's a fit based on where they are, what's going on, and everything else like that. If it's not, I probably can point them in the right direction. I will send them the 20 questions. I don't get the 20 questions back. We don't work together. It's really easy from that perspective. We set up a meeting date for me to spend the 2 days, and I have people who quit after that because they don't want to do the work, and that's fine. You got the process. You just have to do it. And then I have others who I look at their financial statements every single month and have since the 90s. So it just kind of depends. I'm working with the kids of some of the previous owners too, which is
so if they fill out the questionnaire and it's a fit and they like you and you like them, they pay you the upfront fee, you fly out for the 2 days, you go through the financial statements, then what happens?
Then they have a whole bunch of stuff they send me every week. They send a whole bunch of stuff they send me every month. And so that's how I keep track. I hate surprises, okay? If we're looking at this particular type of thing and we know that revenues in this particular area need to be this every week or every day or whatever else it is, every week I get a report. Because I don't want to look at a P&L, 4 weeks later and go, what happened?
Okay.
I want to look at it, every single week to make sure we're heading in the right direction. A week or two, 4 weeks, we got to talk.
Okay.
We got to go figure it out and how to get back on track.
So I know you've had a wide variety of types of businesses who've been your clients. We talked about some of them at the beginning. But if you had to say kind of the average, is your average business in business 1 year, 2 years, startup, 10 years? What are the revenues? Like what's your ideal client profile?
Probably 1 million to about 5 or 6, somewhere
Okay.
around
Yep.
there.
Yep.
With startups, I send them to my books. I send them to my website. You got to have it. You have to know what you don't know yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You got to get your feet wet.
So
And
a million to 5 million, certainly, anywhere above 2 million, even, that's a real business. You got some real clients. You're doing a lot of things right. You probably have a bunch of employees or some trucks on the road. You got a lot of clients. This is a real business, and probably they're hiring you because now they've hit some kind of wall and they're looking at sort of breakthrough, get to the next level, right?
yeah, I call it no man's land.
Yeah.
You will run yourself into the ground if you try to run it by yourself anymore. You're stretched thin. You are not, you're working in the business, not necessarily on it. You don't see your kids. And you got to hire somebody.
Yeah.
The right person or the right people.
Yeah.
Awesome. I started with one $4 million company. He said, I'm ultimately coachable. And I thought, okay, I've heard that before, but he actually was. And they're north of 30 mil right now.
Wow, that's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It took us 2 years to find the right management team.
Amazing. We're going to go to a quick break. We'll be back with the Profitability Master, Ruth King, right after the break. Don't go anywhere because we're going to hear a little bit more about how Ruth does what she does.
This episode of Winning on Main Street is brought to you by Thryv, the small business management platform that you and your customers will love, no matter where you are. Thryv helps you run your business, keep organized, and get paid faster, all from one login and dashboard. Thryv makes it easy for customers to find you online, instantly interact, and stay engaged. And with free unlimited support 24/7, there really is no comparison. Go to thryv.com/pod for a quick demo to see everything Thryv can do.
And we're back with Ruth King, the Profitability Master, an amazing story about everything Ruth has done for 40 years, writing and speaking and coaching to help small businesses succeed and become more profitable. I'm really fascinated, Ruth, by just how you do so much, all these books and everything you've done. You seem to have a ton of energy. I read about you're a marathon runner, you do boot camps, you have a child and so forth. You seem to do it all. And just on a personal level, how do you have so much energy to get all this stuff done?
I don't know. You just do it. Yeah, somebody said to me a long time ago, you can be a great mother, a great wife, and a great business person, but not all three at the same time. So I've not tried to be all three at the same time. But I took up running and ran my first marathon 3 weeks before my 46th birthday because I had to get back in shape. And I found out that I really love running. And so I've run 14. COVID kind of killed it. And so I'm debating over whether I'm going to run another full, but I'm running halves. So, because running fulls take a lot of training time, and I'm not sure I want to invest the training time to do a full anymore. So we'll see. But, I've been writing since I've been in 7th grade, and the e-zine, I still call it an e-zine. I started in June of 1999, and I've missed 1 week since. And that was technology back in the beginning. If you remember correctly, we had to BCC 249 emails to get the emails out. There was no MailChimp. There was no Constant Contact. There was none of that stuff back then. And so, it has grown since then. And that also helps me write books too, because I can pull some stuff from there and things along those lines. But, my clients actually give me the stories for the books. I mean, if you read any of them, they're all stories. They're all true. They're all my clients with the names changed to protect the innocent. And then they'll go, is that me? I'll go, yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, you must have, I don't know what your secret is, but it's working. I read that you were on the road for 12 years doing 200 flights a year earlier in your career, training, helping small businesses. And then I guess in the late 90s, you discovered virtual training, and that kind of changed your life.
Well, it had to change my life because my dear darling daughter, who was 9 years old at the time in private school, decided that she was going to flunk all of her tests because she wanted her mother home. wake-up call. So that's how it, it really and truly did start. And we've done a lot of online training since then. A lot of the things I have are online right now. And that's how I help small businesses who are not, I'm not going to go out and consult with, and who don't want to necessarily spend a large amount of money. We have financiallyfit.business now, where you can enter your financial data and get your graphs yourself. I mean, we've made it so that any small business anywhere in the world can understand the financial side of their business, and you don't need me to do any of that stuff. You just go do it.
Yeah, you've scaled, right? You found a way to
So
do this.
we've made things that are not dependent upon me, which automatically help small businesses. And if you just go, you can put into up to 2 years of historical data in there, and then you enter your numbers every month, get your trends. And if you don't understand where they're going, there's places, okay, look here, look here, look here, look here, so you can actually get it done and understand it.
Yeah, awesome. We just have a couple minutes left. What's next for Ruth King? More books, more speeches, more flying, more contractors? What's next on the agenda?
Next on the agenda is actually international. We're going to take financially fit business around the world. I did my first UK talk, and the first thing I did when we landed was go to a bookstore to make sure accounting in the US was the same as accounting in the UK, and it was. So I was cool. I was absolutely cool with that. So, but that's where it's going. The financially fit business is not dependent upon me. Anybody can use it. It's right now in English. It has not been translated. So unless you speak English, I'm sorry, people who speak Spanish, but at some point it will get into Spanish. It's not yet.
Right. Exciting. Okay, one last time. Where should people go to find out more about you? What's the website?
The best website for everything that we've talked about today is ruthking.info. That is like my platform where everything comes out of, and that side you can click on here to do financially fit.business, or if you want the books, if you want consulting, if you want whatever else it is, or any of the online programs, that's the best place to find me.
Okay, fantastic. Well, again, Ruth, I want to thank you for coming on our show. Great to have you here. And I want everybody to go check out 101 Dumb Financial Mistakes Business Owners Make and How to Avoid Them. The book is right here. It's her latest. She's got 5 other ones for you to check out if you like this one. So thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks, Gordon, for having me. I appreciate it.
And I want to thank our producer, Tim Alima, and coordinators, DeEtte Barnett and Daniel Huddleston. And if you enjoyed this podcast, tell your colleagues, friends, and family to subscribe. And please leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate it. It helps us in the ranking. Small business runs better on Thryv. Get a free demo at Thryv, that's thryv.com/pod. And check out our new free product, Command Center, at thryv.com. Until next time, make it a great week.